What's on your mind? I stared at Cheater, who had just made the suggestion. For an instant, I felt hope. Maybe he believed. Now that he'd had time to think about it, he must have realized that I was right. Cheater smirked at me, and my hopes vanished. I realized that this was his own private joke. I didn't think he was very funny. At least there was no way Mr. Briggs would go for something like that. A science teacher wouldn't mess around with psychic stuff. Excellent suggestion, Dennis, Mr. Briggs said. He strolled across the room to give Cheater a pat on the head and then returned to the board and wrote mind reading in big letters. Whatever Cheater's motives, this was perfect. If the whole class proved that I was right, Cheater couldn't blame me. That's not science, Lucky said. Let's pick something else. Anything can be investigated scientifically, Mr. Briggs told him. He turned back to the class. I want each of you to try to come up with an experiment that we could use to test for mind reading. Is this homework? Torchy asked. Mr. Briggs nodded. Sure, let's say that's your assignment. Take a few days. We'll wait until Monday to see what everybody comes up with. To help you out, I'll tell you about some famous experiments that scientists have carried out in the past. He spent the rest of the period talking about Newton, Galileo, and other scientists, but I had a hard time paying attention. I was thinking about what would happen when the class started running the experiments. On the way out, I caught up to Cheater and asked, "What did you do that for?" "Just to show you how wrong you are," he said. "I'm not wrong. You'll see. Why can't you accept the truth? What are you scared of?" "I'm not scared of anything," he said, but there was something in his eyes that told me he was lying. Before I could say anything else, he rushed away. I continued my search for other kids with special powers. I saw a lot of strange stuff during the rest of the day, although most of it was just bad behavior. But I did see a couple things worth writing down. Lucky found 2 pencils, 3 dimes, and a candy bar, all in a single afternoon. And that's just when I was watching. Who knows what else he found? He never acted surprised. It seemed like he just knew where stuff was. By the end of the day, I had a list of 7 more kids who might have some kind of psychic powers. By Friday, the list had grown to over 2 dozen. I had plenty of time to study my notes on Friday evening. Torchy had skipped into town with his friends. Annie hadn't said a word when he'd left the room. I couldn't understand them. If someone told me I had a special ability, I'd be thrilled. It would be great to know what people were thinking or to know what was going to happen. It would be extremely cool to move things with my mind or see the future, but there was no point in daydreaming about that. I didn't have any special talents except maybe the power to get my teachers so angry that they'd strap me to a chair and shock me or slam my head against a wall. I'm sure Dad would have approved of that form of education. At least I'd finished my week of detention without further pain. I was still awake when Torchy came back. I had to do something. I couldn't keep living like this. "Are you guys going to stay mad at me forever?" I asked. He sat down and looked at the magazines on his desk. Then he glanced out the window. His eyes flickered in my direction once or twice, but quickly bounced away. I realized it must be as rough for him as it was for me. He was so eager to be friends with the whole world, he must hate having to be enemies with anyone, especially someone that he had to share a room with. "We aren't mad," he finally mumbled. "Yeah, you are." Torchy shrugged and studied his picture of Mars. "Well, maybe a little. Look, don't expect me to start begging." He stared down at his sneakers. "Maybe if you knocked off all that crazy stuff about mind reading." "It's not crazy, it's..." I stopped. Did I want to be right or did I want to have friends? It didn't seem fair that I had to choose, but that's the way that it had worked out. I couldn't look somewhere else for friends. I was stuck at Edgeview. Stuck here for good now, thanks to Mr. Briggs and the other teachers. Was it really that important to prove that I was right? "Can't we just forget the whole thing?" I asked. I wouldn't say another word until the experiment proved I was right. Torchy looked at me out of the sides of his eyes. "That would be great," he said. That would be great. I hadn't realized how tense I had been until then. Ever since they'd gotten angry, I'd been walking around like a stretched out rubber band. Now I could feel my whole body relax. "I'm really sorry about what I said to you." "That's okay. I'm not mad. Honest." I felt I had to do something special. I went to my desk and fished around in the bottom drawer until I found what I was looking for. "Here, I want you to have this." I held out my peace offering, hoping that it would make Torchy happy. All right, and here we've got a letter to the editor. The Edgeview Express dated the previous Monday, and we know the Edgeview Express is the newspaper in town. So this is yet another letter to the editor. "Dear editor, those who have been following the issue know that the legislature is considering a merger of the regional alternative schools. Such a move would benefit all the citizens of our town. I urge everyone to call their state representatives and let them know how we feel. From Gordon Blathwell. So this is yet another person who is not in support of the school being in Edgeview.